The 1970s was the decade of excess. It was an unregulated arms race where manufacturers stopped caring about safety and obsessed over horsepower. They built engines that were way too fast for the tires, brakes, and frames of the day. We are talking about two-stroke missiles that handled like shopping carts and six-cylinder monsters that weighed as much as a small car. These machines earned nicknames like the Widowmaker. They are raw, unfiltered, and terrifyingly fast. Today, we have compiled the 10 scariest icons of the 70s. Come on, let's go! Number 10. Suzuki GT750 Water Buffalo. We start our countdown with a machine that changed the game by proving that two-strokes could be refined heavyweights rather than just lightweight screamers. The Suzuki GT750 was the first mass-produced liquid-cooled motorcycle from Japan, earning it the affectionate but heavy nickname Water Buffalo in the US and the Kettle in the UK. It was a technological marvel for its time. Underneath a massive bulbous fuel tank sat a 738 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled two-stroke triple making 67 horsepower. This engine was smooth, torquey, and capable of pulling like a freight train from low revolutions, which was unheard of for a two-stroke. While it could hit 120 miles per hour effortlessly, the speed wasn't the scary part. It was the massive weight combined with the primitive brakes, tipping the scales at a massive 507 pounds. This was a heavy, torquey beast that carried immense momentum. The early models came with a drum brake on the front that was woefully inadequate for stopping a 500-pound missile hurtling down the highway. The drum would heat up and fade rapidly, leaving the rider squeezing the lever with all their might while the horizon rushed toward them. Even when Suzuki finally switched to discs in later models, they were famously useless in the rain. The stainless steel rotors needed to clear the water before they would bite, meaning you would grab the lever, and for the first 3 seconds, absolutely nothing happened. It was a terrifying lag time that felt like trying to stop a freight train with a wooden spoon. It typically sells around $10,000. The Suzuki was heavy and fast, but our next bike is light and vicious. It is the giant killer that embarrassed bikes with engines twice its size, mostly because the front wheel refused to stay on the ground. Number 9. Yamaha RD400. The Yamaha RD series defined the term hooligan long before it became a marketing buzzword. In the late 70s, the RD400 was the ultimate street fighter, a bike built for back alleys and drag races rather than touring. It was a small air-cooled two-stroke twin that punched way above its weight class, humiliating owners of larger four-stroke machines. It used a 398 cubic centimeter engine making 44 horsepower. Because it weighed only 352 pounds, it had a power-to-weight ratio that allowed it to hit 105 miles per hour, but the raw numbers don't tell the full story of why this bike was so fearsome. The scary factor was the wheelies. The power band on the RD400 was like a light switch. You would be rolling along at 4,000 RPM, doing nothing, the engine bogging slightly, and then, suddenly, as the needle swept past 6,000, the engine would scream and the front wheel would shoot toward the sky. It required constant management of the throttle and body weight. It was short, twitchy, and unstable at high speeds. The short wheelbase meant it could turn on a dime, but it also meant it was prone to tank slappers if you hit a bump while accelerating hard. It encouraged bad behavior. It was impossible to ride this bike slowly or responsibly. If you saw an RD400 in your rearview mirror, surrounded by a cloud of blue smoke, you knew the rider was absolutely crazy. We heard from a former owner who said he bought one in 1976. He was used to docile Honda commuters. On his first day of ownership, he tried to impress his friends in a parking lot. He underestimated the violent power delivery in first gear. As he cracked the throttle, the bike looped out instantly, flipping backward and leaving him sitting on the pavement while the bike pirouetted on its taillight. He learned respect for the giant killer that day. Back then, it cost roughly $1,600, making it accessible to young, reckless riders. Today, the demand for these air-cooled two-stroke terrors has pushed prices between $5,000 and $14,000. The Yamaha was a pest. Our next bike was an exotic. It was built by a German genius using a car engine, and it is widely considered the first mammoth of the motorcycle world. Number 8. Munch Mammoth 1200 TTS. If you think modern Boss Haus bikes are crazy, meet their grandfather. Friedel Munch was a German engineer who looked at the motorcycle market in the 60s and 70s and decided that motorcycle engines simply weren't big enough. He wanted massive torque and highway dominance. So he took a 4-cylinder car engine from an NSU Prinz and shoved it into a custom-built cradle frame. The result was the Mammoth. It featured a 1,177 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline-4, making 88 horsepower. In the 70s, a big bike was 750cc. This was 1200. It weighed 650 pounds dry and could hit 135 miles per hour. It was so powerful that standard motorcycle components couldn't handle it. The rear wheel had to be cast from magnesium because standard wire spokes kept snapping under the massive torque output. The chain was enclosed in an oil bath just to keep it from stretching to destruction. Riding one felt like straddling a rocket-powered anvil. It was tall, wide, and imposing. If it tipped over, you weren't picking it up without a crane or 3 friends. It was a machine for the ultra-rich who wanted to terrify the locals on the Autobahn, cruising at speeds that melted ordinary engines. A German mechanic named Hans shared a story about test riding a Mammoth in 1973. He was an experienced rider, used to BMWs and Moto Guzzi's. He said the torque was so violent that he twisted the throttle in top gear to pass a truck and felt the rear tire spin inside the rim because the bead lock couldn't hold it. In the 70s, it cost over $5,000, a fortune that could buy a nice house. Today, these rare beasts command between $70,000 and $150,000. Our next bike was everywhere, and it was the last gasp of the British Empire. It tried to stop the vibration with rubber, but it couldn't stop the speed wobbles. Number 7. Norton Commando 850. By the mid-70s, the British motorcycle industry was collapsing, and Norton was fighting for survival against the Japanese onslaught. To keep up with the power war, they bored out the legendary Commando engine to 850cc. It was intended to compete with the Japanese superbikes on torque and character. It was a torque monster with classic, beautiful looks, powered by an 828 cubic centimeter air-cooled parallel twin, making 60 horsepower. It could hit 122 miles per hour, but it had a dark side hidden in its frame. The Commando used the famous isoelastic rubber mounting system to smooth out the engine vibration. The engine, gearbox, and swing arm were bolted together and mounted to the main frame via rubber bushes. It worked great in a straight line, making the ride incredibly smooth compared to a Triumph or BSA. But in high-speed corners, physics took over. If the rubber mounts were worn even a little bit, or if they weren't shimmed perfectly, the swing arm would flex independently of the frame. This created a terrifying hinge-in-the-middle sensation. You would lean into a fast sweeper at 80, and the bike would start to snake underneath you. The handlebars would oscillate, and the rear wheel would feel like it was steering itself. An owner from London described the Norton Magic perfectly. He said sitting at a stoplight said the engine was shaking so violently his teeth were chattering. It looked like a washing machine on the spin cycle trying to escape the frame. A guy in a Jaguar looked over, concerned that the bike was about to explode. Then, the light turned green. The rider hit 2,000 RPM, and suddenly, silence. The rubber mounts worked. The world smoothed out. He left the Jaguar in the dust, riding on a cloud of air until the next corner, where the wobble returned, forcing him to back off the throttle or risk a high-side crash. In the 70s, it cost $2,500. Today, expect to pay $7,000 to $13,000 for this beautiful, flawed machine. We are digging up the ghosts of the 70s. If you love vintage speed and dangerous engineering, click that like button and subscribe. We are keeping these legends alive. But you see our next bike? It was tight Italian. It was orange, loud, and required the hand strength of a gorilla to ride. Number 6. Laverda Jota 1000. The Laverda Jota was the fastest production motorcycle in the world in 1976. While the Japanese were building smooth, user-friendly bikes, the Italians built a 3-cylinder brute for pure speed. It was painted in signature bright orange, so people could see you coming at 140 miles per hour. It ran on a 981 cubic centimeter air-cooled triple making 90 horsepower. But the scary factor was the physicality. This was not a bike you rode, it was a bike you fought. Everything about it was heavy. The clutch pull was so heavy that riders developed cramping in their left hands within minutes of city riding. The throttle springs were stiff, requiring a strong grip to keep the butterflies open. It was top-heavy and tall. But when you opened it up on the open road, the sound of that 180-degree crank triple was apocalyptic. It screamed with a unique offbeat howl that sounded like a racing car. It vibrated with a high-frequency buzz that could numb your fingers. It demanded total commitment. If you hesitated in a corner, it punished you by running wide. You had to muscle it into every turn. Someone sent an anonymous email from the UK and told us about the Jota's clutch. He said, "I rode it from London to Scotland in '78. It was a glorious ride, blasting past traffic at triple-digit speeds. But by the time I got to the border, my left hand was so swollen I couldn't hold a pint of beer. I had to use 2 hands just to pull the clutch in at traffic lights. People thought I was waving at them, but I was just trying to get the bike into neutral. It was the most painful, wonderful ride of my life. Originally costing $3,500, these orange beasts now sell for $20,000 to $30,000. The Laverda was brute force. But welcome to our next bike, which was pure art. It is one of the most collectible motorcycles ever made. But in the 70s, it was a race bike with a license plate that barely ran on the street. Number 5. Ducati 900 Super Sport. Before Ducati became a luxury brand known for electronics and refinement, they built the 900 Super Sport. It was raw. It had 0 creature comforts. It was essentially a track bike that they grudgingly sold to the public to pay the bills and meet homologation requirements. Powered by an 864 cubic centimeter desmodromic L-twin, making 80 horsepower, it could hit 135 miles per hour. The scary factor was the uncompromising speed. Early models didn't even have turn signals because Ducati figured you didn't need them on a racetrack. The intake roar from the open Del Orto carbs was deafening. There was no airbox to muffle the sound of the engine sucking in air. It had a long wheelbase and was incredibly stable at 130 miles per hour, tracking like a guided missile. But at low speeds, it was a nightmare. The turning radius was like a bus. You couldn't do a U-turn on a standard road without a 3-point turn. The clutch rattled like a bucket of bolts. But the Desmo engine allowed it to rev to the moon without valve float. It encouraged you to ride faster and faster until you were blurring the lines of reality. A vintage racer told us that riding an SS on the street felt like walking a tiger on a leash. It was beautifully behaved as long as you kept moving and fed it speed. But if you stopped, it would try to eat you. It would overheat in traffic, foul its spark plugs, and stall. It demanded to be ridden hard. In the 70s, it cost $3,500. Today, the rarity drives prices between $30,000 and $50,000. We are getting close now. Our next bike was excessive speed. It was Yamaha's attempt to build a muscle bike, but they forgot to design a frame that could handle the engine. Number 4. Yamaha XS1100. In 1978, Yamaha looked at the Honda Goldwing and said, "We can make it faster." They built the XS11, a shaft-drive touring bike with a massive 1,101 cubic centimeter inline-4, making 95 horsepower. It was an 11-second drag strip monster capable of 130 miles per hour. It was designed to be the ultimate touring machine, but the engine was so powerful, it turned the bike into a weapon. While it was a rocket in a straight line, capable of embarrassing Corvettes and Porsches, the cornering was terrifying. It was long, heavy at 600 pounds, and had a shaft drive that caused the rear end to jack up under power and squat under braking. This chassis geometry change made cornering unpredictable. You would enter a turn, hit the gas, and the bike would rise up on its suspension and try to run wide toward the guardrail. Riders called it the XS11. A drag racer named Slick told us he bought an XS11 in '79. He took it to the strip and beat dedicated muscle cars, loving the sheer grunt of the engine. Then he tried to ride it home on a winding canyon road. He said, "I entered the first turn, leaned it over, and the frame started flexing so bad, I thought the bike was made of rubber. The handlebars were shaking, and the rear tire was stepping out. I parked it and took the highway home." It was a dragster, not a corner carver. It was a bargain then at $3,000 and remains a bargain today at $3,000 to $6,000. The Yamaha was fast but flawed. Our next bike was a revelation. It was the first true superbike from Kawasaki, and it took the crown from Honda with brute force. Number 3. Kawasaki Z1 900. In 1973, Kawasaki punched Honda in the mouth. Honda had ruled the world with a CB750, but Kawasaki had been working in secret on something bigger. They released the Z1. It had dual overhead cams, a 903 cubic centimeter engine, and at 82 horsepower, it was the fastest production bike on Earth, topping out at 130 miles per hour. The Z1 engine was a masterpiece, bulletproof, and powerful enough to be tuned for drag racing. The frame? Not so much. It was made of mild steel tubing that simply wasn't stiff enough for 82 horsepower. At high speeds, the Z1 developed a notorious high-speed weave. You would be doing 110 on the highway, feeling like the king of the world, and suddenly, the handlebars would start to oscillate. The bike would start to snake. If you fought it, it got worse. You had to relax your grip and pray the chassis settled down. It was the price you paid to be the king of the road. We found a forum post from an original owner who said, "The engine wanted to go 140, but the chassis wanted to kill you at 90. You had to negotiate with the bike to survive. I put heavier fork oil in, changed the shocks, and braced the frame, but it still danced when you pushed it hard. It was the ultimate status symbol of the era. Originally selling for $1,900, pristine examples now fetch $15,000 to $28,000. Now folks, we are down to the final two. These are the bikes that define the danger of the 70s. Comment below. If you ever experienced the Kawasaki wobble or the two-stroke terror, we want to hear your survival stories. If the Z1 was the king, our next bike was the emperor. It had 6 cylinders, sounded like a Formula One car, and looked like an engine with wheels attached. Number 2, Honda CBX1000. In 1978, Honda decided to show the world what they could do when they ignored the accountants and let the engineers run wild. They built the CBX. It was a statement piece featuring a massive, wide 1,047 cubic centimeter inline-6 engine hanging out in the breeze. With 24 valves and 105 horsepower, it could hit 135 miles per hour. The scary factor was pure intimidation. Just looking at it was scary. The engine was so wide that it looked like it belonged in a car. If you tipped it over, you were terrified of smashing the alternator or the crankcase covers, which stuck out wider than the gas tank. Riding it was an exercise in managing mass. It was top-heavy and complex, but the sound at 9,000 RPM, it didn't sound like a motorcycle. It sounded like a fighter jet taking off. It was fast, smooth, and terrifyingly complex for the average mechanic to maintain. A valve adjustment required dealing with 24 individual shims. A Honda mechanic from the late 70s shared a story about the first CBX he uncrated. He took it for a test ride and hit the red line in 3rd gear. He said, "The sound was so pure, so high-pitched, that people on the sidewalk stopped and looked up at the sky, thinking it was an airplane. It was the most dangerous sound I ever heard. It cost $4,000 new, but today you will need $18,000 to $33,000 to own one." We have arrived at number 1, the bike that coined the term widowmaker. It wasn't the biggest, but it was the most violent. Subscribe so you don't miss the next history lesson. Here is the legend. A bike so scary that it cared nothing for your safety. Number 1, Kawasaki H2 750 Mach 4. The most notorious motorcycle of the 1970s. The Kawasaki H2 750 Mach 4. It was built for one reason: to go faster than anything else from stoplight to stoplight. It ran on a 748 cubic centimeter air-cooled 2-stroke triple making 74 horsepower. It weighed only 423 pounds and could run the quarter mile in 12 seconds flat. The scary factor was everything. The power delivery was explosive. Below 4,000 RPM, it sputtered, smoked, and fouled plugs. It felt broken, but above 4,000, it hit like a sledgehammer. It tried to rip your arms off. The weight distribution was rear biased, meaning the front wheel was purely decorative in the first 3 gears. If you hit a bump while accelerating, the handlebars would slap violently side to side. The frame flexed like a wet noodle. The swing arm twisted under the torque. The fuel consumption was roughly 20 miles per gallon, meaning you were always looking for a gas station. It smoked blue clouds that blinded the people behind you. It screamed like a banshee, and it crashed. It killed more inexperienced riders than perhaps any other bike in history, earning the grim title, the Widowmaker. We found a story from a guy named Crazy Al who bought an H2 brand new in '72. He took his girlfriend on the back for a ride. He left a stop sign and gave it a half throttle, not realizing how light the front end was with a passenger. The bike flipped instantly vertical, dragging the tail light on the asphalt. He saved it by slamming the rear brake, bringing the front wheel down with a bone-jarring crash. His girlfriend got off without saying a word and walked home. She never rode with him again. He kept the bike for 30 years. He said, "It was the only machine that ever truly scared me. And that's why I couldn't sell it. Every time I kicked it over, I wondered if today was the day it would bite me." It was dirt cheap speed at $1,400 then, but today it is a legend worth $20,000 to $30,000. Tell us in the comments. Click the next video to continue the road trip. Also, join our tribe by subscribing. And if you want to support our channel and have early access on the newest videos, become a member. And don't forget to like this video. Ride safe.